This is Football 24/7. He's John McMullen, and I am Tone DeShields II. And this is JAKIB Sports. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys are commenting below. We know you guys love to talk y'all trash. We know you guys love to give John McMullen a lot of grief. Whenever he gives an opinion, yes, John, you know they love to give you grief.
I don't pay attention to it, so I don't know. I'm the exact opposite of Jalen Reagor. You're screaming into the abyss.
The complete opposite of Jalen Reagor and AJ Brown, right? Yeah. Those guys, man, they find reasons to respond to the fans. But man, you guys, today was a hot one at training camp. It's day 6 of open training camp for the Philadelphia Eagles, and today was, from what I heard, very up and down, especially for the offense, John. So please, can you elaborate and just share what your observations were from today's training camp with the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, not too much up, mostly down, right back to where we were before the best offensive practice of camp, and that was on Tuesday. Yeah, bad performance by the offense, but this time there was at least a little bit more context, a little bit. Right. It was kind of understandable because Jordan Mailata was out with a concussion. Andre Dillard was out with a concussion. And we knew Andre didn't finish practice on Tuesday, so we knew something was wrong. He didn't look, injured from a leg standpoint, arm standpoint. So it makes sense now that it was a concussion. But, that means your starting left tackles down, your backup left tackles down. LaRaven Clark was taking the first team reps at left tackle. Coyote Awasika was taking the second team snaps at left tackle. And the Eagles' defensive front dominated, particularly against that side. So it's tough to play offense in this league. I say it all the time, if you can't block people. And they couldn't block people today because they didn't have their 2 top left tackles. So understandable, they struggled a little bit offensively.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what you saw out of those 2 guys, LaRaven Clark and Coyote Awasika. I know you indicated that the defensive line was able to get through a lot, but offensive line depth is important, right? Once you get beyond Jordan Mailata, Andre Dillard, God forbid something happens to those guys mid-season, where do we turn? So I'm curious to know what were your observations of those 2 guys specifically.
Yeah, I mean, if there's nobody in the NFL that could be down to their 3rd left tackle and be comfortable. LaRaven Clark is probably as good as it gets, and he's a veteran guy. He's played a lot, started games for Indianapolis, and he's not good. There's a big drop off between Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard, and never mind Andre Dillard to LaRaven Clark. So, that's one of those things where if that happens, and you saw it a couple of years ago when the Eagles had so many injuries on the offensive line, you kind of raise your hands and go, oh, we do the best we can. But the Eagles have more depth than anybody else on the offensive line, but that doesn't mean you can play the 3rd string players and assume they're going to play like Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. It doesn't work.
And I mean, it's expected, right? For any team, you get down to your 3rd left tackle, your 3rd right tackle. It's to be expected, right?
Yeah, you're done. The average NFL team is done if they're down to their 3rd left tackle. Some of them don't have one. So some are done with their starting left tackles. They can't block anybody. So
and the Eagle has 2 of the top 32. So
yeah, exactly. So and they both happen to get a concussion on the same day, and they'll both be back. So it's nothing to worry about in the long term. But for the short term, one practice at 105-degree real field temperatures, it wasn't good for the offense.
Today, correct me if I'm wrong, today was the longest practice they've had, right?
Yeah, surprised me. I was expecting to show up and I got there a little bit late because I was going too long with Jody and Rick Saratella this morning. So I walked on the field a little bit late and saw Dom DeSandro, the Eagles security guy, and he's the one who usually gives me the heads up on the schedule and how long the practice was going to be. And he said 2 hours, and I said 2 hours? Are you kidding me?
Going back to the Andy Reid days.
Yeah. It was, and it was scheduled for 1:50, so just under 2 hours. They actually want 1:46, but longest practice of the summer, so they didn't back off the heat at all. They moved up practice an hour, so they did do it from that perspective to try to get, as much relief before it got really, really hot. But they went an hour and 46 minutes, and that's as long as they've gone.
So I'm curious, right? Nick Sirianni has this new red, green, yellow practice, and what's been your evaluation as to how the players have responded to this new philosophy he has? Do the players respond better to the green days, the yellow days, the red days?
I think it depends on the player. I'm sure there's some that like late practices, and others love to practice, and others really like the old school sort of mentality. But I've said a lot. That to me, it's an organizational decision. It's not a Nick Sirianni decision alone. The Eagles have done this cost benefit analysis and said, you don't get a ton of time to prepare anyway. So let's get our key players as healthy as possible for week 1, September 11th in Detroit. I kind of agree with that sentiment, by the way. But, there's going to be some sloppy football early in the season, but there's sloppy football everywhere early in the season.
So the NFL took away that 4th preseason game. I'm assuming because of that, well, not because of that, but I'm assuming that week 1, week 2 sort of function as the extended preseason.
Yeah, if you're lucky, it's week 1 and week 2. Could be week 3, could be week 4. Probably not till you get to the second month of the season. They've been playing college football for a long time, and they don't play preseason, so they show up and play right away. I don't think you need preseason games. I think the bigger issue is practice. I mean, practice is scaled back dramatically from what it used to be. The number of practices, the length of practices. You don't need preseason games. I mean, they're really more of a detriment than anything else, except from a financial perspective. But you do need practice, and there's less practice than ever before in the NFL, and they gave that up to get 17 games and eventually 18 games, and that's what you have. So you have guys kind of playing into sort of football readiness in season.
So you're a believer that you don't necessarily need preseason games. I've never really thought about it from that perspective. I mean, I've always looked at it as these young guys get an opportunity to play live action football, but the games aren't as meaningful, right? Coaches have an opportunity to try some guys out, see how fast they play when it comes to game speed, things of that nature. I don't know. I feel like I disagree with you on that, John.
That's fine. A lot of people disagree with me on a lot of things, but from talking to coaches, Doug Peterson used to tell me when he was explaining it, coaches value joint practices more than preseason games. And Nick Sirianni takes that to a whole nother level. But the reason why is you can script what happens in practice. You can't script what happens in a game. So if you want to work on red zone, for instance, well, you got to hope you get into the red zone in an actual game atmosphere. You can just script it. Say, we need red zone work. Let's go do red zone work. Could be hurry up, could be third down. could be 4-minute offense, could be backed up off the goal line. Anything. You could script it and you can work on it. In a game, you have to hope it comes to pass. And these are not real games, so they're not valuable from that standpoint. And you can evaluate young players in practice, and you could probably evaluate them better in practice for that same reason. You can script. If you want to look, if you like a young player, if Tone DeShields likes a young player and you want to see Tay Gowan against the first team, well, you can script it and you can see exactly how much, how many reps. It's actually easier to evaluate young players in practice than preseason games.
I understand your perspective, right? I get what you mean as far as being able to put guys in specific situations that you can dictate essentially who they go up against. You pretty much have full control top to bottom to how that scenario should, potentially play out. But there's something to be said, right, about when things aren't scripted. Isn't that the beauty of the live action game? I mean, personally, I believe Jalen Hurts should play in a preseason game. And then I want to use this as an opportunity to talk about how he played today in training camp. But, that's the beauty of the live game, it not being scripted, guys having to respond to adversity when you don't necessarily know, what's on the other side of that door. Right. So, I mean, isn't there something to be said about that?
Well, by scripted, I don't mean, like WWE. I don't mean the outcome is predetermined. Practice is not scripted. I mean, the period is scripted. So,
well, I'm sorry. That's what I meant by scripted as far as the
that's
the
what
scenario
I mean.
being
That's
set
the
up.
difference. So the plays in the period are not scripted. The defense is trying to stop the offense.
Right.
And look, the joint practices are a big part of this as well. You want to get your feel against other teams because you get used to each other. And that's why Cleveland and Miami will be very, very important. If you didn't have those, I might agree with you that preseason games become a little bit more important. But, I mean, the Eagles aren't playing their starters. They just aren't. I mean, last season, I couldn't believe they didn't play Jalen Hurts, to be honest. He was a completely unproven young quarterback who played 4 games at the end of his rookie season. It wasn't all that effective. And they treated him like he was Aaron Rodgers. And by the way, Aaron Rodgers played some preseason. Very little, but some. But, I've kind of come across to the Eagles side of thinking. There's no point to it. There's nothing to gain from it. You're not going to learn anything about the entrenched players. Now, could you find somebody on the back end of the roster? I've always said there were two coaches who gave me conflicting philosophies about the preseason. 2 very good coaches. One was Marv Levy, won all those Super Bowls with the Bills, and he did not care about preseason. So the Bills, for year after year after year, going to the Super Bowl, best team in the AFC. Go back to those years, they would get thumped in the preseason because they didn't play anybody. They didn't care. They were just trying to find 3 or 4 best players they had for the back end of their roster. That's all they used the preseason for. And then there was Dennis Green in Minnesota who believed winning was a habit. And that made sense to me. And he didn't try to win preseason games. In other words, if he was losing, he wasn't putting the good players back in to win the games. But he was always trying to win the game with the players he had, with the 3rd stringers, the 4th stringers, because he thought winning was a habit and vice versa, losing is a habit. And if you get too used to it, all of a sudden it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I get kind of both sides of it, but that was also a different era. In this particular era, I've heard more than one coach say, we don't have enough time to prepare like we want to prepare anyway. So let's get to week one as healthy as possible.
Understood.
So it's kind of a cost benefit analysis. Now, coaches will never say that in public because they like to portray, and they always no-sell the lack of practice time. You see it all the time. No, we have plenty of time. Denard Wilson was talking about it last week. Well, it was talking. Somebody asked him about the lower corners on the roster. The Eagles have 12 corners, I think, on the roster at last count. And the Josh Blackwells of the world and the Josh Jobs of the world. How do you evaluate those guys? They're never in practice. And when they are in practice, it's against the third team. How do you evaluate those guys? And Denard Wilson said, well, if they get 2 reps, they got to show up for those 2 reps. And I'm like, well, that's great to say, but I mean, come on.
It's a rather small sample size.
Yeah, you're not going to learn anything. Now, they'll play a lot in the preseason, so maybe we'll learn something there. But again, they're playing against – they're not playing against – in other words, if Josh Jobe is playing against A.J. Brown, you're going to get a good indication, is he even remotely ready to play? He's never getting a rep against A.J. Brown. Never. It doesn't work that way. So how do you evaluate these players? It's harder to evaluate players now than it used to be because you don't have the same amount of time.
So what was your evaluation of Hurts today? I mean, like I said, offense didn't really wow anyone today. What was your observation of Jalen Hurts?
I mean, it wasn't good, but I gave you the context. I'm not as concerned with today as other days because, the pass rush was there in his lap pretty much the whole day. There's some concern. And 7-on-7s, there on 2 occasions, he didn't get the ball out. And, there's no excuse for that. And that happens too much. And the only reason that's a concern for me is you're remember in 7-on-7s there's no pass rush, so essentially they're just blowing the whistle at the end saying, all right, you're holding on to the ball too stinking long, you gotta get rid of the football, this is not realistic. So they're shutting down the play, and that to me is an issue because he was a little late throwing the football last year on far too many occasions. And we've talked about not trusting what he sees. And the football's got to come out of your hand on time. And it's certainly in 7-on-7 drills, which are designed for the offense to succeed, basically. That part is a little bit of a concern. That happens way too much.
Yeah, I mean, we're singing the same songs from last season, holding onto the ball too long, not being able to find guys, waiting for guys to get open instead of throwing them open. I mean, it has to come to a point where these improvements have to start to show. The pressure is only going to continue to mount. And again, you and I both know Hurts isn't really a practice player. And he's one of the more fascinating players to evaluate because of his play style. And I guess my next question would be, because of that play style and because of Nick Sirianni's affiliation or infatuation rather with Phillip Rivers and players like that, are you seeing Nick Sirianni try to, I guess, coach Jalen Hurts up to get that passing to that next level, to get those fundamentals, that footwork, to get that processing speed up to another level?
Yeah, they're trying. I mean, that's all they talk about. And, I'm kind of leaning towards, I had this discussion with Adam Kaplan on the sidelines today, as a matter of fact. I think the Eagles need to build around Jalen Hurts. You mentioned Phillip Rivers. That's a good a good name to throw out there because Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen love Phillip Rivers, love him. He's not Phillip Rivers. He's never going to be Phillip Rivers. He's a different type of player. There's things that, Jalen obviously can't do that Phillip Rivers could, but there's also vice versa. And there's a lot Jalen Hurts can do that Phillip Rivers can't do. And I'm at the point where I'm saying, look, the Eagles got to go full Baltimore Ravens here. They got to build the offense around the quarterback and the quarterback's unique traits and unique skill set. I think everybody defaults to the assumption that the Eagles want to throw the football more because that's Jeffrey Lurie, and he's been talking about it for years, and that's what he believes. I'm going the opposite direction. They need to build on the success of last season. We saw what this team looked like when they were pass heavy and 11 personnel, and it wasn't good. Take advantage of the best offensive line in football when Jordan Mailata's out there. Take advantage of the +1 in the running game that Jalen Hurts affords you. And then, make big plays in the passing game when they're there. But to try to turn Jalen Hurts into Phillip Rivers, you're going to fail.
And that begs the question, are they the right coaches for him? I mean, when they brought in Nick Sirianni, they clearly brought him in to try to, I guess, appease Carson Wentz. I believe that was the move. Carson Wentz was still on the roster at that time, and Nick Sirianni was supposed to be, I guess, the heir apparent to Frank Reich to try to, I guess, build that bridge. But it makes you wonder, is Nick Sirianni the right coach for a guy like Jalen Hurts with that kind of skill set?
I don't know. I think Nick did a pretty good job of building around him last year in season. I give Nick a lot of credit for that. It's interesting to me, Nick is a young coach. Nick doesn't have the cachet of, the Bill Belichick's of the world or the Andy Reids of the world. He can't just go in and say, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. He's got to sort of serve a few different masters. He's got to make Jeffrey Lurie happy. He's got to make Howie Roseman happy. He's got to make his team happy. He's got to win games. He's got to make the fan base happy. And it's a very difficult job. It's a very difficult juggling act. So this is where you have this.
So let me ask you this, John. I'm sorry to cut you off. I need to ask you this then. In that case, since he doesn't have the cachet, let me do a slight hypothetical. If he did have the cachet, do you believe Nick Sirianni would try to placate to Hurts' strengths more if he had more control? Like, do you think he would try to really focus or really try to hone that?
Yeah, he did it last year. I mean, when we get to the regular season, Nick has already figured. Nick is going to do what Nick believes he has to do to win games when he gets to the regular season.
Okay.
But the problem is he's going to try something else to begin with, in the hopes to placate some of those other masters I was talking about. Now, if Nick had the cachet of Bill Belichick, which is hard to imagine, but if he could do whatever he wanted to do, he would build this offense around Jalen Hurts. And then in the offseason, he'd be looking for a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. But until he got one, he'd be trying to maximize what he has as much as humanly possible. Now, the Eagles are going to throw the football. They're going to throw it to A.J. Brown. They're going to throw it to Dallas Goedert. Hopefully, they're going to throw it to Devontae Smith, who was out with a groin injury today. They're going to throw the football. Those are three very, very talented receivers. If you had Phillip Rivers, that's the way to go. That is the way to go. No doubt about it. They don't have Phillip Rivers. They have Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is better at different things. Why not take advantage of that?
Yeah, I completely understand. So to close this point on Jalen Hurts, even though there was a handful of bad, what were some things that did stand out to you about Jalen Hurts today that were more so on the positive?
There were some good throws in individuals and 7-on-7s. Jalen Rager got deep again in individual work and beat James Bradbury. That was good.
Really?
Yeah, I mean Jalen's talented. I know people hate when I say that. Um, there's something for your practice argument, Tone, because there's no pressure in practice. So, one of my predictions pre-camp was Jalen Rager's going to have a great training camp because
Doesn't he
he's going to
always?
play. He's going to play against second and third team corners for the most part, and he's just got more talent than they do. And there's no pressure. Um, and he's out there making one-handed catches, and he's beating one of the best corners, and he's having a great camp. And you know, then we'll get to the regular season. We'll see if it carries over, but which it probably won't. But um, I lost. What was the question? I lost the original question, and I got on my Jalen Rager tangent.
It's basically were there any throws on the positive side of things for
Oh,
Jalen Hurts
so
that you
that was
saw?
one of them. Boy, there weren't. Yeah, there weren't a lot. It was not good. It was not good. Gardner Minshew had the play of the day. A nice Andy Reid like shovel pass to Noah Togiai in red zone work, which was perfect. The Eagles have been really bad at that shovel pass since Andy left. They ran it to perfection. So that was a highlight. Britton Kobe had a good day. Um,
I like
big
that kid.
fan,
I'll be honest. I
big
like that kid.
big fan favorite. Boy, he's small though. 5'8", 170 pounds, and they're being generous with that 170 pounds. He does not look 170 pounds, but he had some nice catches. And he got first team reps at punt returner for the first time because Rager was too busy with the first team offense because he was taking first team reps because Devontae was out. And Greg Ward is hurt with a toe injury. And those are the top two punt returners. So Britton Kobe got the first team punt return reps. And, when we get to that Jets game, which is coming up a week from tomorrow, so it's right around the corner, maybe he'll get a chance to show some things because he's going to play a lot.
So what are the chances this guy makes his roster? I mean, yeah, we still have to get to the preseason games to see what he can do in live action, but I mean,
Yeah,
I
he's
saw.
not. Well, he's not going to make the roster unless Jalen gets traded. Jalen Rager.
Yeah, it's pretty deep. You have Brown, Smitty, Pascal,
Yeah, Quez
Quez,
Watkins,
Jalen Rigg. Yeah,
Zach
it's
Pascal.
it's, it's it's pretty crowded back there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty crowded.
He'll be on the practice squad, but if they trade Jalen Rager, that opens up a path for some of the returners.
I like that kid, man. Brent Kobe, man. His footwork is tremendous.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's an interesting story. His grandfather sold like 25 million books. He's like a self-help guru. Well, he passed away. Passed away a number of years ago. He went on a 2-year mission, an LDS mission. So he's an older rookie at 25, but he was a great college player. I mean, if I told you somebody had 4,000 all-purpose yards, 5 return touchdowns, was 3 for 3 throwing the football, used to be high school quarterback, so he's sort of a gadget player as well. At Utah, you'd say, well, that kid's getting drafted. Britton would have gotten drafted, except he's 5'8" and 170 pounds. And, the old Chip Kelly quote, we like big people or we're small people because big people beat up little people in football. It's just what it is.
Yeah, understood. So let's shift to the other side of the ball. Earlier in the show, you mentioned the defensive line. They were just able to get home time and time again. Speak on how much firepower that defensive line is working with, and just how it's just been permeating through training camp.
It's loaded, the defensive line. It's, there's depth, there's versatility. The point where, Brandon Graham, by the way, is, he's 34 years old. He's coming off an Achilles. He whipped Jack Driscoll like you wouldn't believe at one-on-one drills. Who was a good young player, ascending young player. And I think everybody, even Brandon himself, has said, I'm going to be more of a rotational player, and he seems willing to accept it. I'm starting to think, like, if Brandon Graham is playing like Brandon Graham, how do you take him off the field? Yeah, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Jordan Davis, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, because the Sam linebackers are essentially edge rushers in this defense. Derek Barnett, which people don't want to hear, but he's a good player. Deep and versatile, and they can use a lot of different looks, and they're going to use that 5-2 overhang look. When they're not in nickel, when they are in nickel, it's probably going to be the more traditional 4-man front that people are used to. So there are guys, and I look at Milton Williams and Brandon Graham specifically. How do you get them on the field? How do you get them for major snaps? They're so deep. They are deep, and they are good on the defensive line.
Yeah, man. Jonathan Gannon has a tall task ahead of him. Dealing with this much depth on defense. I mean, let's be honest. Like this defense has talent that you can actually win with, if you ask me. I mean, Gannon was sitting with Angelo Cataldi, from WRP, and he indicated that he's in no rush to leave the Philadelphia Eagles. Now,
he's in a rush.
When he said that, I immediately had to laugh because, you went on 2 or 3 head coaching interviews, however many it was, you went on head coaching interviews. That alone signifies that you have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But, you don't want to put the cart before the horse.
I'm not going to buy, that's the industry.
It's business. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody's going to turn down head coaching interviews. And, JG had 3 of them. Really, he interviewed with 3 different teams. He interviewed 3 times with Houston. He was really close to getting that job. He's a well-regarded coach in this league. And, maybe the best chance for the Eagles to keep him is teams don't like hiring defensive people to be head coaches. Those guys are behind the 8 ball to begin with. Most teams want offensive-minded head coaches. So it limits some of the options. He's always going to get interviews because he's so well regarded. He comes across so well to people. He's a good interviewer, which is part of it. He can connect with people really quickly. But he's also a good coach, and for whatever reason, people didn't think so because of the completion percentage and the lack of sacks. And like I always say, the Eagles were such a weird team last year because they were, and I don't have the exact, they were second to last. Only Detroit had fewer sacks, but they were top 10 in pressure percentage. And I think they might have been top 5, but they were at least top 10. That never happens. In the same year, it was the Vikings who were top 5 in sacks and bottom 5 in pressure percentage. Right. I'd rather be the Eagles than the Vikings. I'd rather have the bigger pressure number than the bigger sack number. And that borne itself out because the Eagles were a top 10 defense. The Vikings were a bottom 5 defense. Sacks aren't the be all end all. In Philadelphia, they are, but in the real world, they aren't.
Yeah, we're getting ready to close the show out pretty soon, but if there's one topic I wanted to broach with you before we get out of here, and then eventually I want to ask you who gets your training camp game ball for the day. But before we get to that point, I was reading your article about TJ Edwards and pretty much his journey, and TJ Edwards just continues to flash and flash and flash, in training camp, and he just continues to take his game, his physique, his athleticism to another level. Just continues to make plays. Just is always near the ball, and it got me thinking about something that you specifically said. You said they didn't draft Nakobe Dean necessarily to replace TJ Edwards. They more so drafted him to complement him. And I'm curious to know what's been your evaluation of Dean. I've been hearing rumblings that he's been struggling these past several days.
No, Nakobe hasn't been struggling. It's more of he's learning the defense, learning the terminology, and the other guys have been playing so well. Not only TJ Edwards, but Kaiser White, Davion Taylor's had a great camp. Sean Bradley's had a great camp. So the veteran guys that have been here have played so well, he can't get off the third team. Now, on Tuesday, got a couple first team snaps at the end because they were resting TJ, and just worked out that way because it was hot and some people needed a breather. So, they're getting him in and they're getting him in the mix. Today, he had a fumble recovery. Jason Huntley fumbled at the end of practice, and it was more of, the ball just came to him, but, it gives you some confidence, but he'll be fine. It's just, Jim Schwartz used to call him startup cost. I think Nakobe Dean is the victim of weird expectations because I think people, because of what he was in college, and fans were told he was going to be a first round pick for months and months and months, that they sort of act like he's a first round pick. Well, he's not, and he probably wasn't even going to be, even if he didn't have injury concerns because of his size, and he's not the best athlete in the world. He's probably going to be a second round pick from people I talked to around in the NFL if there wasn't injury issues. So these weird kind of off kilter expectations. I think he's going to be a good player, but he's got to go through. Think about Roquan Smith. I always compare those two because Roquan went to Georgia. Roquan won the Butkus Award. Roquan was a top 10 pick because Roquan is big and he's athletic. And he's been a great NFL player, but he's had his ups and downs. And would you take Roquan Smith? For Eagles fans that don't know him, the answer to that should be yes. But even he had, some startup costs and some hiccups along the way. And he's a far more gifted athletically player. The expectations were just a little bit off kilter, but he's going to be fine.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So, as we close out the show, John, I need to know who gets your game ball. I know you normally give out one, but would you be able to give out a game ball on offense and give out a game ball on defense?
Whew, tough to give one on offense.
I try to sneak it in there.
Defense, TJ. Yeah, TJ keeps playing, keeps making play. Today, the guy who can't cover had a pass breakup on Quez Watkins. Yes, you heard that right. Quez Watkins. TJ continues to play exceptional football. And if you're going to force me to give one on offense, I'm going to give it to Britton Kobe. Why not?
Hey, my man. I'll take it. But
AJ made some plays. AJ Brown made some plays in one-on-ones and 7-on-7. So you know, but he's good. We all know he's good. So let's give it to Britton Kobe.
Hey, I'll take it. Hey, look, Eagles fans, you guys heard it here first. John McMullen. You know, make sure you guys smash that like button. It really helps the content grow. Make sure you guys continue to comment below, especially if you're watching this video after the fact. We appreciate all the support in the world. And also, most importantly, make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. And also, if you want more from John McMullen, if you want to read some of his writing, if you want to check out his reports from the latest Eagles training camp, make sure you guys check out JAKIBsports.com. That's
and real quick, before we
go,
Tone, JAKIBsports.com, Paul Domowitz making his debut today from Canton. So
the Hall of Fame voter. Let's go.
You know, writing about Dick Vermeil going into the Hall of Fame this week. And Damo's obviously out there because he's the Philadelphia Hall of Fame voter. So everyone can check that out at JAKIBsports.com. Just wanted to slip that in as well.
Oh, no, for sure. I appreciate it. Shout out to Paul Domowitz. Shout out to, most importantly, Dick Vermeil, a legendary Philadelphia Eagles coach. He's a Super Bowl champion with the LA Rams. Infamous for sleeping in his office. But, man, it's really exciting that he finally is getting into the Hall of Fame. Long overdue. But, you know, again, like John McMullen said, make sure you guys check out Paul Domowitz's debut as a contributor, as a writer for JAKIB Sports on JAKIBsports.com. That's JAKIB Sports.com. But without further ado, you guys were locked in on Football 24/7 with John McMullen. I am your host, Tone DeShields II. Make sure you guys smash that like button, comment below, subscribe. One love, stay humble, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay hungry. And we're out of here, you guys. Take care.